Hi, Terry here again. In this series of videos exploring retirement or the second half of life or midlife and the decades beyond, and seeking to reimagine this season of life from what our culture often presents to us, that the aging years are a time to shrink our experience or to resist the inevitable decline or to settle into where we are and reimagine these decades of life. And they are, for many of us, decades in life after midlife. To reimagine that time as a time of expansion, a time of maximizing. In previous videos, considered the idea that this is a great time to expand our physical health, to maximize within certainly limits that are part of aging and tragedies that happen and that kind of thing, but to maximize, to expand our physical health as much as is humanly possible, to expand our emotional health, learning to listen to a still small voice within us, to discover our depth, and as avid as we might have been to explore our external world in younger decades, to put that same kind of interest and intensity in exploring the inner life, to expand our heart, to be touched by people, to learn more vulnerability, expand that, to expand our mind, to keep learning, to live more curiously than we did. Many of us have more time. We can explore beyond what we needed to just to stay even in career or to invest so much in raising children. And we have a much broader scope. Today I'd like to talk about expanding ourselves, expanding ourself. In earlier decades of life, it's natural that we pursue and defend our interests, our freedoms, our rights, very much concerned about the I and the me and us, but often a pretty small us, that we take care of who we are. I hear that around a lot in terms of, I need to take care of myself first. Or you ask a person a question about something that might be controversial and the first response is, well, I. And it's natural in a sense. It seems like it comes pretty natural. It starts in very young in preschool, the me, the I. It's like, here's what I want, or here's what I demand. But then as we come to midlife and beyond, I think our capacity expands to go beyond I or small we, just our family or my tribe or my particular denomination or my traditions, even my country, that there's a potential to go beyond the I to the we, and we getting larger and larger, and perhaps even to all, expanding ourselves or expanding our identity. I'm not only part of Southwest Michigan, Reformed Church in America background, white, Anglo-American, or U.S. first and others second, to expand beyond that to perhaps even humanity, perhaps even not only my generation, but few generations, if we're thinking about issues of climate, of earth, caring for our earth, and perhaps even beyond humanity to other creatures, all, and expanding beyond ourselves to think about, how do I do that? How do I identify with more and more? So expanding ourselves, just a few thoughts on that. As we enter midlife, most of us have boundaries, our barriers. This is as far as I can stretch. I can I can think about caring for people who are like me, or I can think about some underprivileged that I identify with or I care for. But what would it be like to reduce or expand those boundaries more and more? To think about moving beyond our comfort zone, moving beyond the practices, the engagements that we have. What would it be like to expand ourselves? I have some things that in this, I'm basically teaching from Retirement Reimagined, a book that I wrote a while back, but just some notes on here. What would it be like to, rather than observe from a distance, look at people that are different from us, or those that have a grievance or a concern or a hurt, and move from observing from a distance to seeking justice up close, to actually come up alongside. One of the earliest pictures I had that was very, I'd say life-changing, but really pushed at me a great deal was decades ago. We were in Georgetown near Washington, D.C. for an event there. And we would walk to this particular restaurant that we loved over a bridge, regularly, sometimes morning and night. And there were usually some homeless people that were there on the bridge and walked by. Typical, I did not make eye contact, I just walked by. Or I would say hello or even drop a few coins in. And then one time walked across that bridge and there was a young lady who was probably a student who was sitting there with a homeless man and had gone to a restaurant nearby to get takeout and actually sat and had lunch with this person, with this homeless man. And that really impacted me to see that. That person was expanding herself beyond where I was willing, or perhaps at that stage even able to expand. And I experienced all those things, some guilt, some wonder, thinking about what kind of a person does that? What kind of a person like me walks by day after day and doesn't really get to know? What would it be like to go beyond my boundaries, my safety boundaries? To move from protecting yourself to learning vulnerability. I need to protect my time, I need to protect my resources, I need to protect my comfort. I need to protect the sense of who I am, because if I get to know somebody, know a concern or come up alongside, it might change my sense of who I am, or it might make me more vulnerable to be asking things that I don't feel comfortable giving. And I put this here, and I have wondered about this for years, perhaps decades, to move beyond living with myself at the center, or yourself at the center, to putting others and all at the center. It's identifying with, it's not like I no longer care for myself, it's that I identify with others so much that it's the we and the all become the center. And then I just have some ideas for expanding ourselves. See if any of these resonate with. One would be to pay attention to persons around you who are hurting, persons that are in a mess, persons that are even hurting themselves, perhaps others, or feeling alone. Then quietly, gently, and graciously seek to connect with them and care. It might be a neighbor, might be a family person, or someone that you encounter just through life. Being more open to understanding. Or identify a cause that moves you deeply. Connect with others who share your passion to make a difference. We have a friend, or a person that was part of a church that we were in years ago, decades ago, and they're building a complex right next to our neighborhood that has several Habitat for Humanity homes being built. And this person, Bill, has a passion for that, for people that need affordable housing, people that can transition to their own home, and see him out there with his orange hat, very, very easily identified. We see him there regularly. He has expanded himself beyond protecting his retirement comfort. He's out there, if it's a little rainy or like this season where it's fall here, that it gets colder, he's out there and he's identified with people. Connect with a person you would normally avoid. Reach across cultural, religious, economic differences. Learn all you can about their values, their perspectives, their beliefs. Try to see life through their eyes, and beyond ourself means not connecting with a person to convert them to our way of thinking or our tradition, but being willing to be vulnerable enough to say they might convert me to some ways of thinking, some ways of believing, of valuing things. Then I worked with a person that his theme was often practice random acts of care and kindness. Just random acts. Take some investment, take some time, do what you can to meet a need. So beyond ourselves, I think of one of the ways of looking at growth is moving from I to a small we, maybe family or a particular church or a particular company or whatever, to move into larger and larger we. We as a community, including some diversity. We as a nation even, we as a world, we as beyond humanity to animals, to the earth, to future generations, expanding ourselves, which means recognizing barriers that we have, protective barriers that can expand or maybe even turn more into vapor. I encourage you to reimagine retirement as a time to expand yourself. It's easy in our culture to think of retirement as a time to shrink, make our boundaries smaller, that we move into a retirement community or we hang around with a few people and disengage, which would be easy if we're no longer involved in a career as much or we're no longer as active in different groups, that our world gets smaller. And as much as possible, we maximize the scope of our engagement, of our identity, of our compassion. Think of the second half of life as a time to expand ourselves. Talk to you next time.